I'm Steve Wood, recovered alcoholic. Welcome to Big Book Compendium. So I'm going to tell a story. So in Colorado lies the ruins of what at one time was a monstrous tree, perhaps the most gigantic tree of its time, one of the biggest trees in the world. And when it met its destruction, it was over 500 years old. That tree was here in the United States when Columbus discovered America, when the Pilgrims settled on Plymouth. In 4 centuries, that tree was struck by lightning 14 times, survived thousands of rainstorms, snowstorms, been frozen over 12 times, caught on fire 11 times, but was hit by avalanches. It survived all these near-death experiences, but in the very end, what killed it was an army of beetles, ate their way through its bark and gradually, slowly ate away its core, destroyed its core, killing its inner strength, and that leveling that monstrous tree to the ground. Age had not withered it. It survived lightning storms, fire and ice. It was something killed it, was small enough to crush between your finger and your thumb. The question is, are we any different from that tree? We survived. Think of all the near-death experiences we survived. Some, alcohol poisonings, overdoses, drunk drivings, drinking poison, smoking poison, violent physical abuse, even attempts at suicide. But all those things did was bring us to our knees, brought us to the ground. In the end, what we didn't see would eat away at our core and slowly kill us spiritually. So our hearts were eaten away. Our core was eaten away by resentments, fears, guilt, anger, pride, selfishness. You see, it was what we held on to that killed us. But unlike the tree, we can be put back together again. We do not have to stay broken and laying on the ground. If you have lost everything, the beautiful thing is your life will come back. If you are in darkness, the lights do come back on. And no matter how far gone off the trail we have gone, the beautiful thing is we can find home again. And recovery begins by simply facing our human imperfections. It is within those imperfections that we discover who we really are, the person we've never known. And when we first started this book study 23 lessons ago, I talked about that we were going to be going on an investigation. And that investigation would lead us to a decision, and that decision would lead us to action, and that action would lead us to results. An investigation is simply doing careful research with very thorough examination, with precise details, facts. Why do we do that? So we can come to a firm conclusion, without a doubt conclusion, convinced. Our investigation took us from doctor's opinion, and then 17 all the way to page 60 with ABCs, what we looked at last week. That's 52 pages. If you don't make that investigation, you never know truly what the problem is, the allergy obsession aspect. And for 3 months, we've used 35 pages to investigate that problem. And once you know the problem, we know we're powerless. And we used 13 pages of We Agnostics to investigate the power, how we find the power, 439, where we find the power deep down within us. And at that point, you either become convinced by doing this, if I'm doing this investigation, that you need power, or you don't think you need power. And that's why he asked us again with the ABCs. Just one more time, he asked us to make sure we are convinced, certain, beyond doubt. So if you are convinced, then it's time to make a decision to seek the power, that power with steps 49, and begin, I like to say, the journey of our lifetime, so we can get results. So investigation, decision, action, results. And our investigation convinced us we need power. We're on page 60. And it says, being convinced, we were at step 3. There's that word again, convinced, right? Certain. All those, we're way past this alcohol thing now. We're getting to some other territory. That's the reason why we're all here today in this book study, because if we never got to this territory, why would we come to this thing? Even, this is the way we look at it. But convinced we're at step 3, which is we decided to turn our will and our life over to God as we understood him. What the step actually says in the written 12 steps is pretty much the same thing with some extra words. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Step 3 is very misunderstood step. So it's easy to get misled. That's why people say they get stuck on step 3. And I'm going to break it down into 5 components. I'm going to put it up here up on the wall. I think everyone can see that. So we're going to look at each one. And the first one is made a decision. So this is why step 3 is very misunderstood, because people believe step 3 is where you turn your own life over to God. Some might even say you must find God in order to do step 3. That's why people get stuck right there. If we could turn our own lives over to the care of God in step 3, we'd only need 3 steps. Our lives would be perfect, and the book would be 63 pages long, and it probably would have disappeared a long time ago. But it says made a decision to turn our lives over to the care of God. It doesn't say step 3, you turn your life over to the care of God. It didn't say that. A decision is a key part of the human thought process. And what do we do in that process is where we analyze the situation, usually of uncertainty, gather facts so we can determine which course of action to take, right? I call decision like a pre-thought plan prior to action. Pre-thought plan. It's almost like when you cook a meal for a bunch of people, you just don't put the food out. You plan it out first, and you in your mind, and you make a decision to go cook, right? But the most important component of any decision is action. So decision is measured by the fact we take action. So just as a decision, like let's say for me to go to the airport, does not magically transport me to the airport. There's a lot of action I got to do to get there. Meaning step 3 is only decision, not an action. We've all heard the 3 frogs in the log cliche, 3 frogs in a log, one makes a decision to jump off, how many are left? And a lot of newcomers will always say, well, 3. I mean, 2. They'll say 2. And they say, no, it's 3. One only made the decision to jump off. And it's so simple, but we forget that little thing. So when a person decides to turn their moral life over to the care of God, as we understood him, we must take the action necessary to turn it over. And that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Until we act on that decision, all we have is a decision. How many people, you don't have to raise your hand, but how many people in here have made a 3rd step in their past recovery times and never took action? And nothing happened because you never took action. You were stuck on this. You were still on that decision. Nothing changes. Nothing changes. Nothing changes. The next one is very misunderstood, is to turn, because people say, you hear in meetings a lot, I need to turn this situation over to God. Let's say a person's going to lose his kids, or he's going to get a divorce, and they say, I'm struggling big time. I just need to turn it over. That's not our program. That's not our program. It's more than just turning a single situation over. It's turning our will and our lives over. Think about that. So what does turnover means? It means it's not the other side of a coin. Turnover means a transfer of control, a shift in the opposite direction. You can even call it transfer of ownership, whatever you want to call it, but it's a shift in the opposite direction. We're turning our will and lives over, not a situation. Our will and our lives. So our will is our thinking, and our lives are our actions. So in step 4, we do inventory of what? Our thinking, resentments, fear, and our actions, harms, sex conduct. So we're making a decision to turn our thinking and actions over to the care of God. Or our thinking and actions over to the care of the steps, because that's really what turns it over anyway. It's 49. You can either look at it either way. Over to the care of God. Just think what the word care means. I think all of us might have a different slight interpretation of what they think care means. It might be calming down, but it means to look after and tend to the needs of somebody or something is really what it means in this plane we're on. And I think of like a caretaker. And when my grandmother was sick, a caretaker was needed, because my grandma was starting to become absent and incompetent. And that caretaker needed to be competent and trustworthy, loving, available, and able to do for her what she couldn't do for herself anymore. Now you put God as that caretaker, and it's endless. God is our caregiver of our thinking and our actions. Yet we turn it over to God, and we do these steps. We still want to try to think them out and then give them to God. That's not the way it works. The last one is God as you understood him. To understand something is simply to comprehend, to know. And in our case, we're trying to comprehend God. We don't have to. It's as you understand him or as you don't understand him. And that, the spiritual power of your own conception rather than another person's. We don't have to listen to the testimony of another person about God and think, I got to figure what this person is saying and follow it precisely. It's your own comprehension, and understanding, no matter how limited it is. So step 3 is just a decision. When we turn last over the care of God, the second dependence to paper, and 4. When I did my 3rd step, my sponsor handed me a piece of paper and told me to write down 3 resentments. And I'm like, okay. And I wrote down 3 resentments. He goes, good, you turn your life over to care of God, go home and do the rest. And I was like, really? He was making a point. Step 49 is the necessary action to turn our life over to care of God. So step 3, I look at it as like a declaration to action. It's our oath. It's our pledge. It's kind of like this. If you go to the doctor, step 1 would be like the diagnosis. Step 2 is the prescription. And step 3, I make a decision to follow the various steps prescribed by the physician in order to get well. The 4th step is taking that action, which begins change. I'm going to turn this off for now. There's an old step 3 story that I love. And a sponsor gets a call from the sponsee this guy is like out of control, restless, irritable, and discontent. It's mad. He's mad in all which ways. And the reason he's mad is because he's not getting the results in the big book that people talk about, those promises that are read at meetings. And the sponsor asks him, have you started your 4th step? And the sponsee says, no, I'm doing that 3rd step prayer daily and it's not helping. And the sponsor instructs the sponsee to get out a cookbook. He's a cook, this guy, to get out a cookbook. He comes back to the phone with the cookbook and the sponsor goes, read me that amazing recipe you have for chocolate cake. So he reads the ingredients, how he mixes it, how hot it goes in the oven, the way he's supposed to watch it, and all his little tricks he does. And when he's through, the sponsor asks him to read it again, tell it again. And he asks him to read it again. When the sponsee gets done with the 3rd or 4th time, he gets really mad and asks, what does this have to do anything about the results in the big book? And the sponsor looked at the sponsee and goes, can I have a piece of cake? See, the sponsor says, no, I cannot. The sponsee, I cannot give you a piece of cake. The sponsor says, why? And the sponsee says, because I haven't gone through the action of making the cake. And the sponsor laughs out loud and says, exactly. Now, do you see why you're not getting the results from the big book? That's exactly, I love that story. It's just so precise and to the point. Let's look at the last paragraph on page 60. All right. This is where we get down the rabbit hole. The first requirement is to be convinced that any life run, self-work, or hardly be a success. So this is a shift in the book here. This is, some people never even get to this part of the book because it, and this is where it completely shifts away from drinking to spiritual. So from this point on, it's all about personality change and spiritual awakening to bring about recovery from this point on. So the thing is, what is success? Because it's hardly be a success. What is success? Success means, it means to achieve a goal. And what is the opposite of success? Failure. So the failure must mean to not achieve a goal. And what he's saying very nicely is that any life around self-will is failure. Let's go back to 52 and look at those bedevilments we looked at a while back ago, and let's just see what he means. We talked about these 52 before, and these bedevilments in the middle of that page, and how they were, every instinct is, you can see them as you go through here. But I'm just going to read them in a different way instead of breaking them down. It says, we're having trouble with personal relationships, failure. We couldn't control our emotional natures, failure. We were prey to misery and depression, failure. We couldn't make a living, failure. We had a feeling of uselessness, failure. We were full of fear, failure. We were unhappy, failure. We couldn't seem to be a real help to other people, failure. All these failures, it's not only just the earmarks of a real alcoholic, it is the results of the illusion you can live life on self-will and run the show ourselves. Any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. What causes these failures? Even more. Why do I get upset so easy? Why do I blame others? Why do I have fear? Why do I have anger? Why do I hold on to that anger? Why do I seek revenge on that anger and harm other people? Why do I hold on to the guilt from doing that? Or I have hate. Why do I have hate? Why do I have judge others? Why do I judge myself? Why am I always on the defensive or greedy or jealous? Why do I always have to be right? Or get the last word in. Even deeper, why do I sometimes, a lot of times, feel less than others? And why do I have pain and stay in pain? Why do I seek ease and comfort? And the real question is, what is driving me? What drives me? Because the average person never knows what drives them to negative thoughts and ideas and harmful actions. They will never know what drives their anger through them, that rage like a river. And they will never know why fear takes them from sane, graceful thinking to out of control. They never know why they go from fear to anger to resentment to fear to harming others to guilt to fear to self-pity to depression over and over and over again. And for us, that happens like a bullet really fast. Fear, anger, resentment, fear, harming others, guilt, self-pity, depression, over and over again. Like, we don't even see it. We think it's the norm. We do not even see it, this stuff approaching. We never know where the sudden destructiveness even comes from. Is it the way I was raised? Maybe it's my belief system. Well, a lot of people say, oh, it's just ego or selfishness. Those are all powerful. None of them drives my thinking and actions. None of those things do. What I'm talking about runs way deeper than those things. Matter of fact, ego, selfishness, belief systems are driven by the exact same thing. So what drives us? The first requirement is to be convinced any life on self-work how to be a success. What is self-will? Self-will is my unconscious devotion to my social, security, and sexual needs. The 3 S's, misdirected instincts. And misdirected means led in the wrong direction. Or you could just say simple misuse of instincts. And misdirected instincts are also referred in the book as many things. Self-will, self, exact nature of our wrongs, defects of character, shortcomings, and they are all the same thing, misdirected instincts. You know, these instincts they're natural. We don't have to learn them. In other words, we're born with them. You know, I mean, if Kevin and I wound up as little babies on an island together, we would figure out how to make shelter and eat food and all this stuff because it's part of our instincts. So those instincts, they drive our thinking, our theories, our beliefs, our ideas. But when misdirected, they erupt through our lives and they disturb everyday activities. They drive and create every single resentment, every harm, every fear. They drive us completely to insanity, and at the same time drive people out of our lives. So truly understand what's turning our world and life over to care of God is about. We must understand instincts just a little bit. And we're going to go to 12 and 12, and I'm going to read a couple paragraphs on page 42 that speak it very well. Page 42. I'll let people come back. Some people ran off to get their 12 and 12. All right, page 42. And it says, creation gave us instincts for a purpose. So that tells me they're God-given. Without them, we wouldn't be complete human beings. If men and women didn't exert themselves to be secure in their persons, made no effort to harvest food or construct shelter, there would be no survival. If they didn't reproduce, the earth wouldn't be populated. If there was no social instinct, if man cared nothing for society or of one another, there would be no society. So these desires for sex relations, for material and emotional security, and for companionship are perfectly necessary, right, and surely God-given. So all that is proper use of the instincts, right? What happens when they're misused? Yet these instincts, so necessary for our existence, often far exceed their proper functions, powerfully, blindly, many times subtly. They drive us, dominate us, and insist upon ruling our lives. Our desires for sex, for material and emotional security, and for an important place in society often tyrannizes. Tyrannizes is an old word. It's like, you know, it's used for like a tyrant boss. It means something has ruled over us or has power over us, right? Or abuse of control. When thus out of joint, man's natural desires cause them great trouble, practically all the trouble there is. No human being, however, is exempt, free, that means free, from these troubles. There's no one gets a free pass. Nearly every serious emotional problem, I would underline this part, nearly every single emotional problem can be seen as a case of misdirected instincts. When that happens, our great natural assets, the instincts, have turned into physical and mental liabilities. I'm going to read something. It's a letter that Bill Wilson wrote in 1954, and I love this. The idea keeps persisting that the instincts are primarily bad and are the roadblocks before which all spirituality falters. I believe the difference between good and evil is not the difference between spiritual and instinctual man. It is a difference between proper and improper use of the instincts. Recognition and right channeling of the instincts is the essence of achieving wholeness. Wow, that's Bill. Bill really got into this stuff, and that's the reason. You got to remember when he wrote those steps on the yellow piece of paper, they never practiced some of them before. He just knew in his heart that they would work. And they didn't do inventory like it's written in the big book. I don't know if those guys ever did like it's written in the big book. But, you know, so we bury painful emotions where? Inside. Becoming aware of our instincts and becoming aware of what brings us pain. And you cannot grow spiritually without becoming aware of your instincts and learning how to detach yourself from them. But on the flip side, the alternative of being aware of, being unaware of our instincts is to continue to choose to live in pain. And so it's vitally important to have an understanding of instincts before you make that third decision. Of course, begin step 4, because it's in the third column of the inventory. It's all there. And to fully understand its instincts, we're going to study its components. So I'm going to put up a slide. Oops. what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this a little bigger. Just go through one piece at a time. Oops, too big. There it goes. All right. So social is interactions with others and yourself. So social is our natural desires for pride, our natural desires for have self-esteem, our natural desire for personal relations with others. So social instincts are concern for one another. You know, it's a natural desire that we all have. We all have it. So let's look at the first one, pride. How my view, how others see me, what others think of us, or the front we want others to see. So healthy pride would make me do my best. Let's just say my front yard looks terrible, and my neighbor redoes his front yard. I might go, well, I better do my yard, make it better. Or I see someone that's in better health than me, and I strive to do better. That's healthy pride. But example of misdirected, I'll just give you a resentment. I get a resentment against someone, and because they said some personal stuff about me in front of a whole room full of people, I think my pride's affected, big time, big time. How often is our pride affected? I mean, a lot. So when misdirected, what happens is pride leads to difficulty. And when we fear what others think of us, we turn our lives over to others, is what we do. And we are afraid people will see us as we really are and know the truth, because we want to be recognized and run the whole show. That's our thing. And so, we disregard others' needs because all we care about is our own. So we lose sight of our goals. And that's what pride does. It takes away, So by trying to demand the correct response from other people, we become dishonest. We overuse lies that just we believe, but here's the end result. We wind up restless, irritable, and discontent. That means all wrapped together. High anxiety, easily pissed off, and not satisfied. Think of the not satisfied thing. That's a big part of instincts. The next one is self-esteem. And I classify them as high and low self-esteem. Not just from years of the way my grant sponsor did it, and his sponsor did it when we did the 4-step, but let's look at those. These are vitally important. So high self-esteem is viewing myself as better than another person. Low is seeing myself as less than another person. So does criticism have to come from other people? We have it right inside of ourselves, and that's what self-esteem is, the evaluation of self. So when self-esteem is affected, it creates a high point called high self-esteem or high self-worth, or that feeling of superiority, better than others, constantly judging others. Let's say a friend of mine gets me very upset, very angry. So my self-esteem is high. I think I'm better than him. Who the hell does he think he is? This jerk's going to hear from me. So that feeling of superiority and betterness is completely taken over me. And it leads to harm. It's very hard to avoid high self-esteem throughout recovery, especially the more you get deeper into the steps and you're at meetings. We can be really judgmental. That's something I struggled with early on in recovery for about 8 years. I've caught myself living in high self-esteem meetings. I felt superiority when a person speaks with no program, and here they go again. Yet I want everyone to have peace of mind. Yet I roll my eyes. I discovered that judging another person in the room with the thought this person has no program, that they don't know what they're talking about. I'm not defining them and defining me. It blocked me from the simple truth that this person is sick. How can I be helpful to them? And like my sponsor said to me one time when I did that in the meeting, he turns to me very gently and says, how hard it is to be that guy? So that always stuck with me. When I see someone in a meeting and it's the same person, dumping the same thing, I gotta realize it's very hard to be that person. And I'm grateful for what I have, and maybe I can help them. So when self-esteem is affected, it can also create a low point, low self-esteem. It's a feeling of feeling worthless, not good enough, less than another person. Kind of a similar example. I get a resentment because a friend says some critical things about me in front of a bunch of people. But instead of me being angry at the guy, I get angry at myself because it's true. My self-esteem goes low. I feel less than, not good enough. It leads me to self-pity and depression. So when self-esteem is misdirected, what happens to our moods? It's always up or down. And we run over others to satisfy our needs. Remember, when we get a resentment, our instincts are hurt or threatened. I satisfy the instincts by harming someone else. It takes it away. That's the only way we're able to get rid of resentments. We run over others to satisfy our needs. We feel others are always looking and judging us. We compete with others. We believe we're better. Our way is the only way. This is the only way it's supposed to be done. We think we're right all the time. And we get angry when people don't do it our way. And we seek revenge. We think we're less than others, not good enough. Failure. We become sad and angry, and when others do not praise us, leads to resentment. The end result is we either try to be the center of attention or we isolate. What we need is that what I needed for myself was to have esteem. I just didn't want self with anything. And esteem means to hold something or a person in high regard, to try to always find the goodness in people. Like I have esteem towards Kicken's kindness, or it helps me see another person's qualities. And I'm not going to look at, takes away from the defects just aren't there as much. To get rid of low self-esteem, we need to do something called esteemable acts. Until we start doing good, we will never believe we're good enough. And esteemable act can be holding the door in front of the person. It can be, doing a favor, or taking someone, to the store, or whatever. Those things are great, but they don't compare to the ultimate esteemable act that's been freely given to us, and that's sponsoring. There's no more esteemable act like sponsoring on this planet. There's nothing like hearing a person's fist up and see them change right in front of you. There's nothing like that person reaching out to you and asking you for help, trusting you with their life and their life story. It's the ultimate act, esteemable act. Let's look at personal relationships. That's relations with other people. Every one of us has a desire to have personal relationships. We all want to be friends all. It's in our network. It's in our program. But personal relationships can create inner circles of support. And we need personal relationships in our lives, on the job, at home, in the public, everywhere. But it's through those personal relationships we learn to help others. But what happens if personal relationships gets misdirected? We make demands on others. We expect others to always do for us. And then what happens? We get resentful when others don't do what we want. We're always trying to please others, losing our goals. We blame others for our problems. We resent others for our problems. We're envious and jealous of others. We compete. We drive people out of our lives. The end result is we isolate and become lonely, all alone. So the next part on here is security. When I was it's safe from danger, and when I was a kid, I remember there was this alarm system at a school. I remember it because I tripped the alarm one time on purpose, but that's the whole story. But the alarm said the feeling of being safe and protected on it. What makes humans want to feel safe and protected? A natural fear called security. A natural fear. It's our well-being, even our health. So we have two types of ones here. We have emotional security, stability with yourself and others. Every day we experience emotions: love, fear, anger, joy, sadness, guilt, whatever it is. Emotions are a strong response to our instincts. And we want our emotions to feel secure and calm and serene. And if they're not, we don't blame ourselves. We look out here to try to fix them. And emotional security is measured by our emotional state. In step 4, we're talking about our emotional security as being affected, right? What resentment isn't affected by emotional security? It should be on every single resentment you have. And I look at it like this. Down the block from me, there's a field where they have extreme high tension wires. You can't live underneath them or anything. And right now, they're just swaying in the wind, calm. Just swaying in the wind. But what happens if one breaks and hits the ground? It goes to the ground and goes, blah, 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 blah. It's just going crazy and spins around. How many times have you felt like that wire? How many times have your emotional security been affected, and all of a sudden you're like, blah, blah, blah. That's what happens to us. Think about the simplest aspect of not finding your keys in the morning, or something like that. What I mean? You have all these scenarios. Oh my God, I'm not gonna get to work. I'm not gonna get here. I'm not gonna get there. I'm not gonna call in sick. And then they're right in front of you. That's what we do with our mind, though. When emotional security is misdirected, the most common symptoms are self-pity and anxiety. And self-pity is where I resent so many people. There's only one left to resent. That's me. The reoccurring displeasure at yourself. Anxiety is just a feeling of worry, uneasiness, nervousness, future event, panic attack, whatever you want to call it. We become emotionally insecure. It's a feeling of uneasy or nervousness, and we get angry with defensive reactions. The end result is depression, which is a feeling of it comes from the word being pressed down upon, feeling of low mood that causes a person to feel hopeless, helpless, worthiness, overwhelmed. And we sit there trying to figure it out and think we can't get out of that box. And that affects normal day-to-day activities. And it's the lowering of self-worth. What did fear do to your emotional security? From a harm standpoint, how many people have you robbed their emotional security? When I made amends to my mother, I said to her, how can I make it right? We went through all that stuff. And then she says, I'm just glad you're not being scraped off the sidewalk. I'm not getting a call at 3 o'clock in the morning and I can sleep now. And I thought, wow, I robbed this woman for years of her emotional security. Yet people will say the only person I ever harmed is myself, right? You hear that all the time in recovery. We harmed lots of people. Material security. This is one that really causes a lot of resentments because the need for money and property, employment, cars. Well, that's right. Yeah, we want that. But what happens if someone gets in the way of it? It just propels me, but it does propel me to get a job, make money, have things that feel secure. Food, shelter, transportation is all outside ourselves. And we feel like if we get enough of these things, we'll feel great. Each one of us has different feels to feel secure. But when material security is misdirected, we believe we need more things. And what am I going to do? I'm going to run over to get what I need. Think about when you're running amok. We fear we never have enough of anything. We pursue beyond what we have. We drive beyond our needs. We take down others with us. And we become dishonest. We resent and harm others who get in the way of our material desires. And the 4th step, they call it pocketbook. The end result is we are never satisfied. Never satisfied. It's a place that all of us have been to before, that feeling of never satisfied. It can be scary. The next one is sex, reproduction, and or pleasure. How do we know how we reproduce? but it also tends to be fun and feels good and satisfies us and creates problems, meaning we hurt others. Sex relations with sex, thinking or actions. It's not that, I mean, like when we get in the sex inventory, it's not the action of sex, it's the surrounding stuff around it. It's not intercourse. But sexually, yeah, thinking or actions, we all have sex relations and sex drive. I mean, it's natural. Animals do not have sex relations. They just go to town and reproduce. They don't even think about they don't have no choice in their partner. They just do it. We have free will and intelligence to make decisions based on sex. This is choosing our partners. It's this ability that can cause sex problems. So when a sex instinct is misdirected, we're always pursuing it. I got to find the right person or just feel better. So so it can lead to anger. How about jealousy? We never have that. We drive on sex. Revenge. Just like the other ones, we hurt others to get what we want. But think of this: we get involved with the wrong people, and when sex instinct is misdirected, we get stuck with the wrong people. We have it at the wrong times, and for the wrong reasons, and we make choices that hurt others. We become dishonest, hiding our sex relations. And that creates false. So the sex instinct out of whack creates false standards where we think it's supposed to be. We don't get what we want. We get resentful and retaliate. And the result is we're very discontent, unsatisfied with our sex life. The last one is ambitions. And it's all these, let me bring this out a little bit. It's all these. It's the social, security, and sex. So think about what ambitions are for success or achievement. It's our future goals. Any instinct when misdirected will change the course of events affecting our lives. Has resentments or harms ever changed your plans? Has fear ever steered you away from your ideals? Has pride changed the course of events? Have you ever quit a job because you think you need more money? Has high self-esteem ever destroyed a long-term relationship that you had lots of plans? Then the result is our plans, our goals, our dreams, ideals have changed because our social security and sex instincts are misdirected. Give you an example. Let's say Steve and I are going to start a business together, and he goes, I got the ultimate business. I want you to move over to England and from the US. And so I sit here and I go, oh, awesome. And so I immediately put my house up for sale. I start figuring out how to segue myself there. I got all set up. And then moving day happens. I get a call from him saying, there's a change in plans. We can't do it no more. So my plan's going this way, and now they went this way. Everything gets changed. Now put that with a relationship. You have plans to get married. You have this, you have that. But one thing about alcoholics who live on misdirected instincts, we lay out our plans. We want the whole future planned out in front of us, all the way to 2032. And then they never wind up that way. So there's no living in the now. Most important on this, you see on the 4-step fear is bracketed next to Mr. Brown and all that, right? And it's because fear, it's this basic survival mechanism. It motivates these instincts. It motivates them. So here's the thing is, you can go on fighting anyone or anything and stay completely unaware that it is misdirected instincts that is the real cause of all your problems. You can stay fighting them. But the alternative to fighting anything or anyone is making a decision to turn your life over to the care of God, relinquishing our self-will to the care of God, giving your self-will to the care of God. I'm going to turn this down. Go back and what happened? There we are. is giving that self-will over the care of God. What step 49 does, 49 is the alignment of your personality, your character, with your spirit where? Within you, right? It is no longer about always trying to align your personality and your character with your instincts. That it's 49, it's all about aligning your personality and character with your spirit within. It's no longer about aligning your personality and character, your instincts. Think about that for a second. All those instincts, I pursued that stuff and it led to the resentments. There's something about becoming aware of that. It's the awareness. I mean, we could walk into the fourth step, have no idea what it's going to, we have kind of an idea. We have a proper sponsorship changes the way we look at everything. Because of misdirected instincts, your true spiritual identity within is being held in the bondage of what? Self. Relieving the bondage of self. So it's when it's released from the bondage of self, you discover again, like I said earlier, who you really are. One thing I always think about this is in the rooms, you hear people say, I got the isms. Like it's one of those sayings. What they're saying is they're referring to wine and drink. I got a little bit of the isms today, but I'm going to explain this from what my mentor taught me years ago. And he changed my whole perspective on things by saying this. What the isms really stands for is insufficient spiritual maturity. Insufficient spiritual maturity. Insufficient spiritual maturity, it's like this. If I started drinking or using when I was 13 years old and I get sober at 30 or 25 or whatever it is, I have the emotional maturity of a 13-year-old. Drinking and using slowed down my emotional maturity because I self-medicated myself. I drowned myself. I never faced my emotions. So of course I'm going to have the emotional stability of a 13-year-old. So with emotional maturity comes spiritual maturity. And that's simply learning right from wrong. And when you should do something or when you shouldn't do something, where does that come from? It's been there our whole life. We know whenever we were doing something bad, that something was telling us inside, even when we kept doing it, comes from within. Comes from within. So spiritual maturity is the ability to listen to your voice within. We never had spiritual maturity because we insisted on following our instincts rather than that voice. The voice within is God consciousness. And this is very important, is why do we need to achieve God consciousness? Because God consciousness is the only thing that is capable of exceeding our animal instincts. The God consciousness, that voice within us. We must look within and find what the big book calls the great reality. And at that point, we can finally wake up from this matrix we've been living in and have sufficient spiritual maturity. That's where we flourish. They're awakened. Here's the most important thing. Humans are controlled by instincts. We always have and always will be, whether we realize it or not. And these basic instincts, if misdirected, govern every decision. That's why I say the steps are for anyone, lifelong believer, unbeliever, atheist, agnostic, the angry, those who struggle with being healthy, the lost alcoholic, the lost addict, the dry drunk, the dry addict, all those in between, all inclusive, because when it comes down to that, strip away, oh, he did this drug, he drank this stuff, and he took these pills, screw all that shit. Any life we're on self-will can hardly be a success. It's where we all land, our feet land in the same spot. That's why there's no reason why we can't sponsor anyone. And the two important facts is the first one is we cannot have two cores. We cannot. We can't have two cores. It's either God or instincts. Second fact is self-will can overcome self-will. In other words, the same mind that creates the problem will never solve the problem. if you have misdirected instincts and try to defeat it by using misdirected instincts, that's called complete insanity. So you have a choice. We can continue to be driven by instincts, and you can let God take over the driver's seat. You know, it sounds like a simple choice. What's your choice? What's your choice? So if you are thinking, how can God help me? Or how can this God guy help me? Or this God thing help me? Is that God speaking, or is that your instinct speaking? Think about that. Or what is this guy, crazy guy Steve thinks he is? Is that God speaking, or is it your instincts? Maybe it's both. So you have a choice, God or instincts. What's our choice to be? Or simply, how free do you want to be? Because in the end, there's nothing on this planet that humbles us more than the misdirected instincts. Because where it leads us, if we become aware. I'm going to leave with a quote by Walter Anderson. Our lives only improve when we are willing to take chances. And the first and most difficult risk we will ever take is to be honest with ourselves. So it's time to get honest with ourselves and really look at ourselves. Next week, we're going to look at instincts again. We're going to look at through the guy who wants to run the whole show, and where the instincts fill in and run through the actor. So I'm going to stop it right here and we'll discuss.